into technology. He completed his MBA from HKUST Business School, Hong Kong. He then went on to pursue a job, which he then left in 2014 to teach the underprivileged students in slums in Delhi. Ever since he has got into IB Hubs, he has been mentoring startups, dealing with innovation, validation, commercialization, and various numerous factors that might come into play. So, without taking much longer time, I would pass on the stage to Abhinav sir, and if sir you could brief the students about what they will be having for this session today.
Great. Thank you, Akshat. So I hope everyone is able to hear me clearly. Can you please type one in the chat, the number one in the chat, if all of you are able to hear me clearly? Just wanted to check. Harshitesh. Okay, great. Uh, the session that I'll be covering will be on life, work, and entrepreneurship in Industry 4.0. So we'll talk a little bit firstly about Industry 4.0, then we'll talk about a little bit about potential innovations and how you can come up with the new ideas within the 21st century and build startups based on it. Uh, Also, I do not want this session just to be a lecture. To be honest, I have attended enough webinars in the last 2 years. And, I feel that it can be a little more interactive. So in between, I will be asking you questions and we'll be using sort of a binary approach. Okay. Uh, so we'll be typing 0 for no and, 1 for yes. Okay. Type 2 in the chat if you understood how we'll be using the binary approach. We'll be using numbers. Okay, great. So this makes it easy for all of you. And in certain cases, we may want to discuss questions. At that point of time, I can ask you to raise hands. Okay. Uh, so again, I'm repeating. In between, we'll keep it interactive. So I'll ask questions. So sometimes what I'll do is I'll ask a true or false type of questions where, I'll ask you to type 1 for true, 0 for false, things along those lines. Okay. So we'll keep discussing questions and all, but your answers mostly will be in the form of numbers. Right, so it's easier to type numbers rather than to type entire sentences. Okay. uh, so to get started, yeah, and before I start the session, there are two important points I wanted to tell. So firstly, ever since this habit of webinar started, we are in this culture of taking screenshots. Okay. So while taking screenshots is great, how many of us go back and look at those screenshots ever again? Right. So just think about that point. So I would say if you want to really take some learnings from the session, make sure you're taking a lot of notes. Okay. Take a lot of notes. The second point I would like to say is that, see, within a 1 hour session, you will not end up doing a PhD or a master's in the topic that we're going to share. So what we will do is after the session, my colleague Hemant will share with Akshat and the organizing team. We will share a set of freely available blogs, resources, YouTube channels, etc., that you can go through after the session. Okay. But make sure you have a look at it if you are really interested in becoming an entrepreneur. Okay. Very quick question. Can you type 7 in the chat if you're interested to start a company one day? I just wanted to check. And type 0 if you're not interested. It's okay if you're not interested also. Okay. Right. So some of you may be interested in starting a company. A lot of you may be interested in starting a company. Some of you may not, right? But whatever I'm going to share, it is applicable mostly in one sense in working with starting a new company, and it is also applicable if you do become, let's say, a product manager or a uh, innovative person within a company, or what we like to call entrepreneurs. Okay. So it is applicable both for entrepreneurs on one side and entrepreneurs on the other side. Okay. Uh, so now very quickly, I will get started. Akshit, can I share my screen? Do I have the rights already?
Yes, sir, I believe you do.
Okay.
Can you try?
I will share my screen quickly then. Okay, let's see. Okay, so I hope you all are able to see my screen now.
Yes, sir.
Please type one in the chat if you're able to see my screen. Great. Most of you are. Okay. So firstly, I'll quickly start with the 1 minute introduction of what IB Hubs is. I belong to an organization called IB Hubs, and I believe this is my second or third session with your college. Uh, so IB Hubs is a global hub for Industry 4.0 technology. We're a team of 800 young people, mostly young people. Uh, Majority of our leadership team are alumni of IITs, IIMs. Some of us had jobs in companies like Microsoft, Amazon, Intel. So we quit our jobs to form IB Hubs together. And, you know, we want, we formed IB Hubs because we want to make India a global leader in Industry 4.0 technologies. And I'll discuss a little later about what Industry 4.0 is. Okay. Uh, so we are also guided by a knowledge network of doctorates, postgrads, scientists, industrialists from organizations like Harvard, Stanford, MIT, etc. Uh, and you may be wondering, okay, what does IB Hubs do? Right. So we're doing four important things. Firstly, what we're doing is we're creating a workforce for Industry 4.0. So what this simply means is that if there are people who want to, let's say, learn about Industry 4.0 technologies, learn skills, so we're helping train them in those skills. So for example, let's say if you're a college student or a working professional who wants to learn about blockchain or data analytics or artificial intelligence, so we're doing skilling or teaching those skills to students, working professionals, etc. We do our R&D in these 4.0 technologies. We're developing products. And then the fourth thing is we're also building startups, some of our startups as well. So these are the four things that we're working on. Type 4, if you understood all the four things that we're working on, it's very short. I'm not going to take a lot of time in this introduction. Okay. And at IB Hubs, we've trained more than 55,000 people so far across the country. There is a portfolio of programs uh, which covers various aspects that I mentioned earlier. So whether it's technology skilling or startup programs, there are some interesting programs that you can look through if you are uh, interested. Uh, some of the products that we've developed. So we've developed something called IB Cricket, which is the world's most immersive virtual reality experience. So this has been launched since 2018. It was the first ball of IB Cricket was played by the President of India. And ever since that, it's been a partner of IPL teams. More than 150 cricketers have experienced IB Cricket, and people like Harsha Bogle, Mutaya Muralidharan, sit on the gaming advisory board of the product. CyberEye is in cybersecurity, basically secure private networks. Uh, they have a huge coverage area right now. English Engine is for English language training. Again, I'm not going into details. This is just an overview of some of the products that we've been working on. And we've supported more than 155 startups through our various initiatives. So startups could range from areas such as artificial intelligence, such as Arrow AI, which develops AI-based solutions for governments and businesses, Tech Eagle, which develops drones, to even startups such as Namaste Gaon, which is digitizing rural information, uh, or EdUnify, which is working in the tech space. So there are various startups that we've supported so far. So that was a little bit of an introduction about IB Hubs. Again, I want to, if you want to check out more about what IB Hubs does, you can go to the IB Hubs website, not the Startup School website, the IB Hubs website. Uh, okay. So Hemant, can you just post the IB Hubs website? I think not the Startup School website at this point. Yeah, great. Thank you. Uh, So whatever we'll be discussing now in the session, sometimes there'll be links that will be get posted. Maybe it could be, uh, an article or a YouTube video, but we'll keep posting links sometimes. Okay. So life, work, and entrepreneurship in Industry 4.0. Let's quickly get started. And I want to start things off with a small test for all of you. Okay. This is a very small test. Some of you may have done this test before. But what I'll do is I will show you a sentence that is written all in capital letters. Okay, so you don't have to worry about small or capital letters. I will show you a sentence and you have to count the number of times the letter F appears in that sentence. Okay. Uh, So please count the number of Fs. I will show it for 15 seconds. You can quickly count the number of times the letter F appears. F for food or F for fruit. Okay. Once you have counted, you can type your answer in the chat. Okay. Okay. So I think, yeah, all of you had got a chance to count. Now, if you can see everyone's answers, can someone type in the chat why we are getting different answers? Why is everyone counting differently? Some of you already know the answer, I'm aware. Uh, okay. Can you raise your hand and mention? Okay, so we have, okay. So Priyanshu is saying less time. Okay. Some people saying less time, but I think it is enough time. Okay, great. So the actual answer is 6. Okay. What usually happens is we miss the F that comes in the letter of. That is what usually happens. Okay. We miss the letter F that comes at the end of off. Okay, so we end up counting 1, 2, 3, but we miss these 3 offs. That is what usually happens with people, right? And a lot of people make the same mistakes. It isn't lack of confidence or anything. I think it's just, uh, yes. And it isn't magic as well, Nishant. As much as we would like to believe in magic, it isn't magic. What it boils down to is very simple. Uh, so what happens when we are reading sentences or when we're asked to do a task? The obvious things are things that we pick up. Okay. And the details are sometimes what we miss. Okay. The small details are sometimes what we miss. Uh, so when I am starting this session, one important message to all of you is, be very switched on, because there might be some detail that you may miss that may lead to a brilliant idea that may come in your head. Okay. So make sure you're participating, make sure you're paying attention to small details. Okay. When I was a student, I always used to think that, oh yeah, all the things are already invented in the world. If I was born in the 60s or 50s, I could have invented the ATM machine or the MRI machine or radiology or X-ray. How many of you people think that a lot of things have already been invented in the world? Type 1 if you think a lot of things are invented in the world, right? So a lot of us get this feeling that yaar bahut sari cheezein invent ho chuki hain. Everything's already invented. What is there to do, right? And what I will try to show you in this session is that that feeling is actually a bias. That isn't really true. There are areas to innovate on or invent on, and I'll try to give you a picture of what areas you can look at if you want to create businesses in Industry 4.0. Okay. So far so good. Type 1 if you're listening. Type 0 if you're slept already in the session. Okay, great. Some people have slept. Majority are listening. 1 or 2 have slept. Okay, so if you want to sleep, yeah, go ahead and sleep, but drop from the session. Okay. So quickly moving on. Uh, So we won't do this activity right now, but this is an article that appeared in the Guardian magazine. You can search for it in your own time. Just search for the title whenever you get a chance. Now, in fact, I can give you the link to this article very quickly in the chat. I think that will be easy. So if you can take 1 minute to quickly read this article. Okay. Take 1 minute to quickly read this article. Uh, I've posted the link. Take 1 minute to quickly read this article. Okay, and on a scale of 1 to 5, you can rate the quality of article, 1 being very bad and 5 being very good. Quick browse through and then give a rating. And there's an important point at the bottom. At the end of the article, there's a very important point. Uh, can someone, identify that point and type in the chat? No, not support the Guardian, not that, Dishan. Something related to editing. Something related to editing. A comment on editing. A comment on editing. There's a comment on editing, the quality of editing. Okay, Akshit, very good. So Akshit has identified it correctly. Uh, Overall, it took less time to edit. It took less time to edit than many human articles. Okay. Uh, so if you want to think of ideas along the lines of AI, you already have certain ideas that you can work towards. Okay. Uh, so the point I'm making through this article, and this appeared in September 2020 in the Guardian, someone was asking, is it Microsoft's? I think Microsoft is part of the OpenAI Alliance. You can search OpenAI and see which companies are part of it. Uh, but the point I wanted to make through this article is that the future is already here. Okay, what we talk about, futuristic technologies, some of them are already here. It's just that we do not notice them in the mainstream. Okay, to give you some small examples, Google DeepMind. So Google DeepMind was a company, AI-based company that Google acquired a few years ago. Now Google DeepMind is Google's artificial intelligence arm. Uh, so it is working in various areas such as, it is using AI ML algorithms in Google servers to actually optimize the electricity usage. Okay, to optimize electricity usage, and they ended up saving 20 to 30% of electricity in the huge server offices that are there of Google. In fact, DeepMind is also collaborating with Liverpool Football Club to identify which players will fit into their team. Okay, so this is something interesting you can go and explore as well for those who follow football. Amper is a music assistant for musicians, music composers. So you can explore Amper as a company. Flow Machines created one of the world's first albums that were composed completely by AI. IBM Watson, I'm sure if you are from a computer science background, a lot of you would have heard of. So it famously beat professional players at certain games. And it's been used for things such as medical diagnostics and all. Uh, Amazon is doing certain things with drone delivery. It's already started in the UK. Ring is a IoT-based solution for things such as home monitoring, for uh, uh, automation as well. OpenAI, I already discussed a little bit. But one company that I would like you guys to explore a lot is Calico. Okay. Calico Labs is something I would like you to explore. This is a very interesting company because it is trying to solve the problem of old age. It is trying to solve the problem of aging, people growing old. So Calico is sort of beyond Industry 4.0. Can somebody quickly go to Calico Labs ka website and tell me which giant company is behind Calico Labs? It's supported by a very big company already. You can type in the chat if you can go to Calico Labs and identify. Go to the Calico Labs website. I think you can do a simple search. Okay, Microsoft. Is it Microsoft? Google. Yeah, I think it was Google. Great. Most of you identified it is indeed Google. So Google is investing into things such as solving the problem of old age. Alphabet or Google, yeah. Alphabet is the name of the parent company, right? Uh, so a lot of the things in the future are already here. Can someone explain to me why we do not notice these things coming into the world? Why are we not noticing? So we're noticing things such as Bitcoin, things such as your Netflix and all. Why are we not noticing these things? Less demand. Very good, Shrishti. One thing is less demand. The second thing is public interest. Okay. Because common masses cannot understand it, Akshit. Very good. Immediate benefit, awareness, not as per current need. Harsh, surprisingly, Amber, for example, provides assistance to music composers to compose music. So a lot of composers have already started using it. Not a lot, some of them have already started using it. Okay, so what it boils down to is something called change blindness. Okay, so what happens in human beings is that, and this is a concept from cognitive psychology. So what happens is we are blind to changes that take place quite slowly, or changes that we do not pay attention to. So for example, if you go to a family wedding or a family function, so some of your relatives will say, oh, kitna bada ho gaya hai, you've grown so much, right? So they'll say something like, you've grown so much. So why do they notice that change, and why don't you notice that change? You don't notice yourself growing, right? But somebody else who's seeing you after 2-3 years, they notice that you're growing. It's a slow process. Perfect. Ravi and Shrishti, it's a slow process, right? Okay, so I'm going to show you a small video, or I will share a link with you of that small video. I think that will be easier. Uh, mm, so just take 1 minute to go through that video, and we can quickly discuss it later. Okay, I'm going to send you a short 1 minute video. Okay. You can watch it very quickly. It's a 1 minute video only, 1 or 2 minutes, I think. 1 minute video. Just watch it very quickly, and then just type in your comment what you noticed after watching the video. We can maybe try playing the video here also if it's working. Perfect. Yeah. So I think a lot of you have already watched the video. It isn't exactly an illusion, but what is happening is we are blind to slow change. Okay, so that is why we don't notice our height growing till it grows by 1 or 2 inches, right? So when we're kids, our height is growing maybe by 0.0000 something every day, but we don't notice it because it's a very small change, right? Or it's a very gradual change, slow change to be precise, right? So even in the case of these companies, so what is happening is these companies are iteratively becoming more and more important in areas of business, in the area of government, in the area of diagnostics, right? But till we don't notice them till the point they become really really mainstream. So it's a gradual change that is coming about in the world. And that is what we usually call an industrial revolution. I think somebody is unmuted. Can you mute yourself, whoever is unmuted? Hmm.
Hmm.
Okay, great. I think the person muted themselves. So that is a gradual change that happens, and that is what, once it has happened over a long period of time, we usually end up calling it an industrial revolution. Okay. So very quickly, if you look at the history of industrial revolutions, Industry 1.0, quite simple. All of us studied this in our history class. Industry 1.0, the first industrial revolution that happened in the UK, in Europe. It was powered by something related to mechanical. I know some of you are computer science students, or a lot of you are computer science students, but can you guess what was Industry 1.0? The first industrial revolution. Vikas, very good. It was powered by steam engines. And what happened with Industry 1.0 is when the steam engine came about, there was a shift from using human energy to start to leverage the energy of machines, right? To start using steam engines to leverage the energy of machines, right? And that led to things such as factories, mills, textiles. A lot of things started coming up with Industry 1.0. Industry 2.0 is a little more challenging. Abhishek and the rest of you, Nishant and all. So Industry 2.0, can you guess? This happened more in early 20th century. So mass production, yes. Electricity, assembly line. What else? What else? Automation, no, that came later. Automobiles, Ford was a big company that started. Aman, very good. The establishment of the railways was a very important aspect, right? Oil also started coming into being. But we're missing something important. It starts with the letter T. Something related to TE, not train. Trade, you're close. Textile, no, that already happened. Telephone, very good, Ashutosh. One more thing related to telephone. Telephone was still for local communication, but something that enabled communication across the world, not technology. The telegraph, very good.
Telegraph.
The telegraph and the telegram, very good. That was Industry 2.0. So essentially, Industry 2, if you notice the pattern, 1.0 is moving from muscle energy or human energy, using human effort, to using machine efforts. 2.0 is about mass production, electricity, steel, energy, etc., but also communication and transport, right? So it's easy to produce things, but more important after producing things is being able to transport them and then being able to communicate with people at far distances. So that was Industry 2.0. Industry 3.0 is something that we have been experiencing a little bit. Can you tell me what's been Industry 3.0? Automation, computer. What was the first thing that started Industry 3.0? It starts with the letter S, and it is there in the periodic table as well. Silicon,
Yes.
silicon chip. The silicon chip was what started Industry 3.0. Okay. And even before the invention of the silicon chip, there was a collaboration between a university and industry. Stanford University and the company HP. that led to the formation of things such as, the Silicon Valley and the creation of a lot of tech companies. Now, if you look at the top 5 biggest companies in the world right now, who would you name? Can you start naming some of those top 5 biggest companies in the world by market value or amongst the top 10? Google is the obvious one, right? Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Tesla is becoming big amongst the car companies. Intel. Okay. And what's common amongst all these companies, except maybe for Tesla? What's common amongst all these companies that
These
you're
are tech
naming?
related companies.
These are all tech companies. That is one. The second thing is most of these companies originated in a certain part of the United States. Most of these companies originated in the certain part of the United States. Okay. Now, let me tell you a little economic background to these industrial revolutions. Okay. Industry 1.0 happens in the UK, in Europe. And then what happens, of course, Europe and UK, they have colonies everywhere. So they take resources from those places, they power the industry, the first industrial revolution, and a lot of jobs, a lot of wealth gets created in the UK, in parts of Europe, right? Industry 2.0 happens mostly in America and in Germany. Those are the two leaders, and those two countries become the foremost or the richest countries in the world. And then and they're thriving. Their populations are thriving. Then World War I and World War II happen, right? And the US becomes stronger. Germany becomes a little weak. And we go to Industry 3.0. Industry 3.0, the US strengthens its hold over the world, right? Not in terms of ruling the world, but indirectly creating things that are value for the world, right? And then later Industry 3.0, China, and to a certain extent India, they become part of sort of the producers, the factory producers of the world. They start producing the products in Asia, specifically China, India, Southeast Asia, right? Now we're heading towards Industry 3.0, 4.0. So 1.0 focused on mechanical energy, 2.0 mass production, transport, communication, 3.0 digitization, right? Digital. And then 4.0 moves to the next level. So this is combining the mechanical, what we call the physical and the digital. Okay. We're combining the physical and the digital. So the mechanical, the physical, the digital are moving together. Okay. So there's something that we wear on our wrists that is a classic example of moving from Industry 3.0 to 4.0. So there's something we wear in our wrists, right? So watches becoming smarter is an example, right? Specifically smart watches that are becoming more and more important. Phones, smartphones, smart bands, smart refrigerators, smart ACs, things are becoming smarter. That is one aspect. And of course, there are other technologies as well. So things such as AI, things such as ML, things such as data analytics. So all these things are coming into Industry 4.0. But there's an important thing that you must understand about Industry 4.0. So when we say Industry 4.0, we don't know which technologies will start dominating. Okay, we are not sure which specific technologies or products will start dominating, but what we know is it will be a combination of your physical, your digital, and your sort of biological systems. It will be a combination of these systems that is leading to Industry 4.0. And the fun part to understand is that we are in the middle of Industry 4.0. It's just that we are not noticing a lot of those changes yet. Okay, we're not noticing a lot of those changes yet. So this is just a short snapshot. Maybe if you want to take a screenshot or take some notes from 1.0 to 2.0 to 3.0 to 4.0. So I hope you've understood what I mean when I say Industry 4.0, right? And Industry 5.0 will be, fusion of physical, biological, cyber systems. It will be a combination of all three. So I personally, I like to think that Calico Labs is part of Industry 5.0, right? Or Neuralink is also part of Industry 5.0, cyber humans, the Matrix, right? So let's not get into conspiracies right now, but Industry 5.0 will be very interesting, probably beyond our times, maybe 40, 50, 60 years later, but it will be quite interesting. Okay. Important point for you to understand is understand the pattern that is happening, right? So we're going from mechanical to electrical and to electronic and now to cyber physical systems, right? Uh, Great. I can see that a lot of you follow sci-fi stuff. I can see you watch a lot of sci-fi movies as well. Maybe one movie that I can recommend to all of you is Ender's Game. Type 1 if you've watched Ender's Game before. Type 0 if you have not watched it. Okay, a lot of you have not watched it. So I will uh, mm, stop typing, please. I'll type the name of the movie. If you want to watch, you can watch it in your own time. It should be available on some of the streaming platforms. It's a very interesting movie to understand a little bit more about. Uh, so Chintan has a very good question. Our robotics industry 6.0, robotics, I would say started in industry 3.0, but then again, the extent of the robotics sort of is a little different. Yeah, Avengers Endgame, everyone has watched it, Ish, so I think that's fine. Ender's Game is the one I'm talking about. Uh, Okay, so I hope so far so good. Please type one in the chat if you've understood about industrial revolutions and you're still listening and you've not gone to sleep. Then only type one. If you're gone to sleep, please type 0 and go to sleep. Okay, great. Great. So a lot of you are listening. That is wonderful. So now I'm going to send you a short video. I thought that instead of giving you a lecture on Industry 4.0, I'm going to just give you a short video to watch. Please don't type anything in the chat now because I'm going to just send you a video link. Okay. So take 3 or 4 minutes to watch this video and try to understand what is the fourth industrial revolution. Okay. Better than me giving you a lecture, right, on what is industry. Just watch the video. Uh, Ignore. Yeah, you can skip the ad. You can skip the ad. Uh, I have not placed the ad. I think YouTube has placed the ad in between. Other than just finish the ad. Na? Gaurav, guys, can you type in the chat later? We can keep discussing later. Abhi, everyone, can you just watch the YouTube video that I've sent you? I think then we can move on to the discussion. The World Economic Forum, a former Great, Harsh. If you've seen this video, great. I think, yeah. Okay, great. I think some of you have already finished watching the video. Great. Uh, we will wait 1 more minute for people to complete. Yeah. You can type one in the chat after you finish watching so that I know you've finished watching the video. Okay. So what's different with Industry 4.0 is something very interesting. What's different with Industry 4.0 is that there are two aspects to it. One, that it is moving very, very fast compared to the previous industrial revolutions. Okay. It's still moving slow enough for us not to notice it, but it's moving very, very fast compared to the previous industrial revolutions, right? And the second thing that's happened very interesting is that we have been part of a global pandemic, right? So we've been experiencing the negative effects of a global pandemic, and that has only accelerated the effects of Industry 4.0. That has only accelerated the effects of Industry 4.0. So that is what is a little different. And if you think of how it has accelerated the effects of Industry 4.0, so let's just use a small example, right? So there would be businesses and government organizations who were not using technology before. But because of the pandemic, they've been forced to adopt technologies, right? In a lot of cases. There are people who were not tech friendly, but they've become you know, uh, sort of they've had to become tech friendly to actually adjust to the effects of the pandemic. If you guys are interested, I can send you one more short video later on, solutions for countering Industry 4.0, negative effects of Industry 4.0. Of course, there are some positive effects, there are some negative effects, as it's there with any change that takes place. Okay, so let's not get into discussion on taxes and all. I'll send you a nice video on taxation and all, how it could work. You can watch it later. Okay, Sarthak and Shyam, we can discuss it later. Great. Uh, so now try to understand certain trends and forces that are taking place within the 21st century, within this industry 4.0. Please type one in the chat if you're on the trends and forces slide and not worried about taxes right now. Okay, great, great. Okay, so let's try to understand this because this is very important. So certain trends and forces that are operating in the world right now. One thing is the nature of work is changing. We're doing more and more gig work and we're doing more and more remote work, right? So gig work uh, and remote work is something that is happening. This is becoming more and more. In terms of generational succession, the nature of people working in generations is changing. Like earlier, what used to happen, if your father was a farmer or your grandfather was a farmer, you would also become a farmer. Right? That is how it took place in most families. While this is still the case in a lot of families, but it is certainly changing. People are becoming more and more freer to pursue careers that they want, right? To pursue sort of the roles that they want. Another thing is that I think over the last 100 years, we have brought in more than 76% of the world's population out of complete poverty. Again, my numbers may be a little wrong here, but we've brought a significant number of people out of complete poverty, and the middle class is becoming more and more in all countries, the number of people in the middle class. Women are participating more and more in society. So if you look at the 50s or the 60s, I think there's a recent documentary on IITians that came out. So there was one girl in IIT Bombay's batch in the 1960s, and now you've seen a number of women participating. That's something great, right? People are migrating more and more to cities. Cities are becoming huge. There's a migration from rural areas to urban areas, right? And that leads to, although there are negatives of it in terms of crowding and pollution, but it also leads to more collaboration, more sort of innovation taking place. Okay. Technical advancement, we have things like mobility in the cloud, data analytics, IoT, VR, AR, MR. So again, if you're from a tech background, you would already know some of these things. If you're not from a tech background, I would say go and research on the effects of these technologies. What I would like to share is things related to the economic models. So one thing is we are moving into something called a sharing economy. Can you tell me a company which allows us to share cars? Type the name of the company very quickly. Ola, Uber. Ola, Uber, it allows us to share cabs and cars, right? So even though we think that they are, it's like a cab where it's a driver, but it's actually the thing is ride sharing, right? So they have space in their car. They want to make money from their car, and they're able to make money while they're able to offer you the ability to use their car space, right? We are having more and more responsive business models. So businesses have to be very adaptive and responsive. There is continuous generative ideation. So companies have to continuously create ideas. If you want to research on how companies are creating ideas, I'll give you two examples. Search for Google X and Airtel X in your own time. So these are like moonshot divisions of Google and Airtel, where new ideas are continuously generated, and a lot of companies across the world are creating these divisions. Another thing that has changed from the 20th century to the 21st century is the power balance between customers and companies. Now companies are forced to look after customer experience, right? So if somebody has a bad experience on Indigo Airlines, for example, or Jet Airways or any other airline, the airline has to make sure that it looks after the feedback. It has to take care of the feedback. Why now? Why do companies have to take care of customer feedback now? They have to take care of it more now. Why does it happen? If a customer gives feedback, the company has to take care of it now. What's the change from the 20th century to the 21st century? Competition was always there. Money was always there. Social media is the name of the game. Social media is the name of the game. Social media is the name of the game. The reason is the customer experience has become very important because almost a lot of the customers are now online, and they have access to social media, and they're able to communicate with the world about their experience. And that communication with the world also leads to feedback and ratings and all. That is what has changed. So in the economic models, customer experience has become a very important aspect, right? Yes. Now, how does all these trends and forces and technologies, how do they change entrepreneurship in Industry 4.0? How do you actually come up with ideas in Industry 4.0? So one framework that I like to use is the 12 inevitable forces. So this is by Kevin Kelly, who's the founder of who's a futurist, and who's a important leader in the US. So he's come up with a framework called 12 inevitable forces. We'll share the resource at the end of the session in the list of resources. But what he said is that, okay, although we may not be sure of the products that may come through, we may not be sure of the innovations that may come in Industry 4.0, but we can be sure of the forces that are operating. Okay. So I'll give you a small example. In Industry 2.0 and 1.0, when we were establishing factories, one of the forces that was in operation was that there was a force of centralization. Okay, when I say centralization, factories were becoming these centralized centers and people used to live far away from factories. Okay, why did the factories have to be separate away from kids and families? Why did the factories have to be away? What is in the characteristics of factories that they have to be away from residential areas? So they have to be very centralized in a particular location. One is pollution, very good. Chemicals, noise. Think of thermodynamics, guys. Thermodynamics. All of you have studied thermodynamics. Think of thermodynamics. Two things. One starts with T and the other starts with P. Pollution, noise, all that is there. Disturbances, transport, temperature, very good. One is high temperatures and high pressures, high temperature and high pressure. So a lot of these factories operated machines, right? So that is why the force in operation was the force of centralization. So what we ended up doing was we did centralization. We created centralized centers, not centralized centers. That does not make sense. We centralized, the production in one place, and then people lived in other areas, right? So that was a force in operation industry 2.0 and 1.0 as well. Okay, type 1, if you understood this centralization point, little complicated. I hope I've explained it well. Okay,
But also the
great.
industries would have to be placed where the resources are available nearby, isn't it?
Yes. So a lot of the characteristics, they led to changes in human society, human behavior and societal development, right? So then you have these big factories being developed in the outskirts, and then you have people living in residential areas together, right? So this led to the human behavior changing. The revolution led to the change in human behavior and how humans came together, right? So industry, similar to industry 1.0 and 2.0, industry 4.0 as well, there are certain forces operating which are leading to changes. And if you can take advantage of these forces, right? If you are aware of these forces, you can come up with many ideas to innovate within these forces, right? So I'll give you a small example. The first force that Kevin Kelly talks about is becoming. Things are moving from fixed products to constantly upgraded services and subscriptions. Things are moving from fixed products to constantly upgraded services and subscriptions. So there is something for entertainment purpose that we used to buy as a fixed product before. Now it's a subscription or it's a service, online service, cloud service now. Can somebody tell me what is that thing?
Online gaming.
Online gaming, very good. Type in the chat. Movies.
Amazon Prime.
We used to buy DVDs for movies, right? The DVDs and cassettes. Not Amazon, Amazon nahi. Music is the big one. Music is the big one. So if you were born in the 90s, if you're as old as I am, then there were apps like LimeWire and all, which were initially illegal. Okay, because what they used to do is they used to use cloud space to share music. It was cloud sharing of music, right? And the music industry did not like it at that point of time, and because the CD sales were going down, their DVD sales were going down. And what happened eventually was, initially after the initial sort of negative reaction, torrents were a classic example, right? So after an initial negative reaction, eventually things moved from a fixed product, right? So we don't use DVDs anymore. We don't use CDs a lot anymore. Some people still use it to a certain extent, but majority of people, what do we use for listening to music? We use iTunes, we use Ghana, we use Spotify, right? YouTube, right? So initially it was a fixed product. Now it's a constantly upgraded service and subscription, right? So if you want to think of new ideas, just think of something that is a fixed product that you can convert to a subscription? Just think of this question amongst your friends or amongst your teams. You will come up with many different ideas. So I'll discuss one of these forces as a case study later. But I'm not going to go through details of all these forces. Okay, you can think of more and more examples. Cognifying is quite simple, another force that is happening. So in the 20th century, we started getting electricity everywhere, right? So when we walk into a room, we expect the light to be there. Electricity is everywhere. Wherever we go, we assume that there is electricity. Now, what's happening in the 21st century, whichever app that we're using or whichever software we're using, it has a cloud AI running in the background. Can you tell me a social media example of cloud AI? Can you give me a social media example of cloud AI? A feature on social media that uses AI? The YouTube, Google Assistant, Facebook ka specifically. What is that feature in Facebook that uses AI a lot? It starts with T. Facebook, something starts with T. There's a feature in Facebook. It starts with the letter T. Suggestions. I'm talking about the Facebook timeline, the trending features to a certain extent, but timeline starts with, So if you keep the timeline at the default feature, then what it will do is, based on the clicks that you make, it makes decisions on what you like and dislike, and then you get your timeline, right? You get things that you like more. So they identify patterns about you, as Ritesh says. So that is, again, there's a cloud AI running in the background. Amazon does something with books that has a cloud AI running in the background. What does Amazon do? Netflix also does something. What does Amazon do? Don't give me the feature. Tell me, what does Amazon do with books? It gives recommendations. Very good. It gives toxicity. Based on your purchase history, it gives similar recommendations. Very good. Netflix tells us, yeah. So what will happen in the 21st century eventually is, in the 20th century, we started electrifying things, right? Now we are cognifying things. We are cognifying things. Earlier, we were putting electricity in things. And now we are putting more and more AI into things, right? So we're cognifying it. So AI will not be like some machine or robot or some huge thing. It will be like electricity. It will run in the background and it will make things smarter. Okay. So if you want to think of new ideas related to cognifying, just think of what is an object that you can cognify, right? What is an object that you can cognify? If you were in the 20th century, you could be Thomas Alva Edison and you can say, oh yeah, I can electrify rooms. Let me invent a bulb, right? But now you're in the 21st century, think of what you can cognify. Okay. So that's another force that's operating. Flowing, endless real-time flows of streams, tags, music. So things that are flowing, right? So can you tell me an information of, an example of information flow, example of flowing, an innovation that has developed? It starts with the word W. It's an endless flow of information. Endless flow of information. Everything's hyperlinked, which we go to do our projects. Web, yes. Wikipedia is the one. Wikipedia, right? So think of this. 20 years ago, there was an Encyclopedia Britannica that used to come out. So earlier, Britannica started with a collection of 20, 30 books, very fat books that people used to keep in the library, right? Then Britannica became a CD. Now, Britannica is almost not required. It's online mostly. And Wikipedia has sort of replaced Britannica almost completely, right? So the world's information is becoming a series of flows, right? It's a flow, like a river. Wikipedia is a river of information. Can you tell me an example of a river of books? What invention is creating a river of books? Kindle. Libraries, right? Through ebooks, we're creating flows. Okay. Blogs would be a classic example. Yeah, Bhargav, I'll not go through that because that is not strictly legal, right? Okay, screening. We're putting more and more screens on things. If you want to come up with ideas, just think of something simple. What can I put a screen on? Can you tell me the latest objects that we're putting screens on? Interactive screens. So we put screens on phones, right? That is the common example. What else have we put a screen on? We put a screen on the fridge. TVs and phones. Bands, we're putting screens on mirrors, right? We're putting screens on mirrors. So if you want to search for a very interesting startup, search for this one, Active Mirror. Okay. Search for Active Mirror. We're putting screens on cars as well. Very interesting. Screens on washing machine. So you can think of more and more ideas if you want. Just think of, okay, where can I put a screen where it will be useful for people? Okay. If you want to think deeper. Okay, guys. Thank you. I think you're coming up with a lot of ideas. It is great. Can we stop typing for a minute? Because I'm going to make a very important point. Okay, great. So if you want to think of screens, just think of where people are idle and where you could put a screen for them to watch. At a low level, if you go to a doctor, they have come up with a screen innovation. They use TVs for it. So basically what they do is they'll go and at the waiting center, they'll put the dentist usually will put a screen, right? So they do the advertising. Similarly, people are putting screens on top of cabs now. Screen on buildings, in lifts. Very good, Minshu. That's a interesting idea to explore, right? Digital advertising screens in lifts. So it's happening in 5 stars right now already, but 5-star hotels already. But you can think of more and more ideas where you can put screens, right? Railway stations, traffic, very good. So see, if you start thinking about it, you can come up with thousands of ideas on where you could put screens. Great. Then the next force is accessing, transition from ownership of things to access of services. Okay. Instead of owning things, we're accessing them as a service. A classic example of this is, Uber. Uber allows us to access cars without owning the cars, right? Sharing, innovation built on the wisdom of crowds. Can you tell me an invention that is built on by crowds? People, that is built by people across the world. Again, we looked at it in flowing as well. When we discussed flowing, we looked at this invention that is created by people. Linux. YouTube, yes. Wikipedia. Wikipedia is a classic example of sharing, right?
So sorry to interrupt, but I understand that everyone is really enjoying the session, but we're on the time limit right now. So
Tell me when to end if you want.
wrap up within like 5-10 minutes if you can.
Okay, I'm just closing then. Okay, so these forces I'll give you sort of notes about it later. Accessing, you can look at a few examples. Yeah, so we started with software as a service. Now we're moving to things as a service. So this is the most common place where you can start with ideas. Think of X as a service, right? What can you create as a service? So you can think of furniture as a service, vacation as a service, ventilators as a service, marriage dresses as a service, handbags as a service. So these are sort of areas where you can innovate very quickly. I'll move on. Okay, how to prepare for industry 4.0 is quite simple. So be aware of the forces, know how the world is changing, right? Get some mentors from the industry, get some people who are aware of these forces. Make sure you actually reach out to people on LinkedIn, connect with these people, spend time learning these skills. If you're into tech, learn from the visionary people. Akshita, I'll close in another 4 or 5 minutes, okay? Learn from the visionary people like Kevin Kelly, Ray Kurzweil. So we'll send you links of these people as well. We'll send a resource link. Sindhu will send a link of resources, whichever is shared in the session. Okay. The PPT will not be accessible, but we'll share the resources that are there in the session. So you can go through the resources in your own time. Okay. Quick 1 minute to tell you a last piece of advice. So how many of you can identify these people? Just type the names of these people very quickly, very quickly. I have less time. Aishwarya, CR7, and Donald Trump, right? So we know these sets of people. How many of you know these sets of people? Type 1 if you can identify one person. Type 2 if you can identify two people. Type 3 if you can identify three. Type 4 if you can identify four. Type 0 if you can identify no one. Okay. A lot of you can identify. Great. So I think my team will send the links to these four people. You can go through the lives of these four people. Okay, great. So these are four people who are playing a very important part in Industry 4.0. So if you want to learn about Industry 4.0, just follow these people, follow them on YouTube, try to understand their lectures and all. You'll get a lot of valuable information. Okay. Again, be a sponge. It starts with having the right mindset. So, try to learn as much as possible, skill yourself in Industry 4.0, get good mentors, and reflect daily. I think the last part, in the last 2 minutes, just listen to this carefully. What are we doing to prepare individuals for Industry 4.0? So one thing that you can all do is you can join the 4.0 tech student community. So this is free to join. So already 2 lakh students from 3,000 colleges are part of this community. This is run by one of our startups called Next Wave. So if you're interested, you can join the tech community. You can look at CCBP programs. So CCBP Academy is there, and CCBP Tech Intensive is there. So Academy is for first and second year students. Intensive is for final year students. Again, you can go through the details in your own time. We'll send you the links. 10x IIT is a program we're running for IITs. And yeah, so the two most important programs that I want to share about: India 4.0 Dr. APJ program. So through this, we are providing free 4.0 education to 1 crore financially backward children. So if you know someone who's from a family who's financially needy family, who's from 5th grade to 10th grade kids, then you can ask people to register for the India 4.0 Dr. APJ project. It's something we're running in the honor of Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam. Okay. IBF Startup School is something, it's another free program that we run. So this is designed for student entrepreneurs. I think a couple of students, Priyanshu and I don't know if it's the same Priyanshu, who are graduates of Startup School from your college. So IBF Startup School is a student acceleration program designed for student entrepreneurs, 4 weeks of intensive hands-on learning, zero fee, zero equity. So this is run in the summers at zero fee, zero cost. So Saurabh, if you're asking how can we join the program, so again, you can look at the links, you can check out whatever is convenient or whatever you feel like looking at. Startup School happens every summer from May and June. Applications open in March, mid-March, early April. And then, so we get around 800 to 1,000 applications from across the country, and then 15 to 20 students get selected. So this is an acceleration program specifically for student entrepreneurs. So you have to be a student to be part of this program. Okay. So this is a short overview of Startup School. 94 student startups, 9 batches, 150 entrepreneurs. Few slides on that. And yeah. And thank you so much for your time. It's a pity we ran out of time, but I hope you had fun in this session. You can note down the links if you want. And yeah, if you want to, explore more, you can explore through the resources that we give you. So we'll be sharing the resources with all of you. And I think in the end, yeah, type 1 if you enjoyed the session, type 0 if you did not enjoy, just taking a quick survey. Right? If you learned something and had fun, right? Okay, great. Great. So I hope, your time spent was useful here. And yeah, yeah, so we'll share the resources in the PPT. Okay, we'll share the resources that we discuss in the PPT. you can go through them in your own time. We'll also share links, whatever links that were there, we'll put them in one place and we'll share them with you. Okay, so my team is going to share a feedback session, a feedback page in the chat. Can you just take 1 minute to give your feedback on the session? As we say, na, customer experience is becoming very important. So the form link is shared.